The AC/DC Beyond the Thunder podcast is back in black. With your host, Kurt Squires, with Greg Ferguson and Eric Gill. For those about to talk, we salute you.
Okay, let's shake things up with this very special edition, foundation-shaking AC/DC Beyond the Thunder episode, a podcast that highlights everyone from well-known athletes and actors, chefs and comedians, priests and politicians and wrestlers to writers, while trying to accurately pinpoint just how AC/DC's influenced so many lives around us in so many wonderful ways. But what if you were actually in the eye of the storm as the drummer of AC/DC, who kept the band's heartbeat alive throughout the 80s and then went on to sit behind the drum kit for even more rock and roll heroes, including Ronnie James Dio, Michael Schenker of UFO, John Norm of Europe, Jeff Tate's Queensryche, and recently forming Metal Gods, the ultimate ode to Dio and Judas Priest. Ladies and gentlemen, AC/DC Beyond the Thunder has officially sent for the man all the way from sunny California. Please welcome veteran stickman, Mr. Simon Wright.
Hey guys, how you doing out there?
So nice to have you on the show, man.
Pleasure.
Great to have you.
Be here.
So we wanted to ask you about the town of Oldham. Is that near Greater Manchester?
Yeah, it's probably about, I couldn't say exactly, probably about 15 miles away from the city center. It's got its own city center, so it's like a smaller town.
Okay. Compare that where you're living now. Describe what life was like growing up over there compared to where you are now in sunny California.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I've been back home, obviously, and it's really strange. I mean, the streets seem really, really small and narrow and stuff, and the houses are all completely jammed together. But I had a good upbringing there. I really enjoyed myself as a kid. We were a really happy, laughing family pretty much all the time, and it's a pretty simple upbringing, really, till I found drums. Then it got a bit noisier.
I was going to say, are you the only person in your family that has a musical bone, or did you start that bloodline?
No, my father, he used to play a snare drum in the Scouts, but he never continued it.
Okay.
He was nothing but encouragement to me. So was my mother, when I was playing or learning how to play and stuff. So that was a blessing, It could have been a real nightmare for them, but they put up with it.
Nice. They bought you your first drum kit. It was a used drum kit, right?
Yeah, my dad did. There was a keyboard player lived like three doors down, who had a kit but didn't want to, play it anymore and became a keyboard player. It was a real mess when we got it. We had to paint it and fix it up.
Yeah. Were they the type of parents that would support you throughout your career? Did they go to your shows?
Yeah. They would come along and all. A great moment was when I played with AC/DC. We did the Castle Donington thing in England and all, and they came along, and my cousins and my aunts and uncles and
the whole lot.
They drank the beer tent dry.
That's classic.
I wasn't trying to prove anything to them, really. Any of them. They all were very supportive of me, But again, they were surprised when I got such a high profile gig, So it was nice. It was really cool. Great day.
And so what were your early influences? I heard Zeppelin, Thin Lizzy, UFO, and all of those drummers, of course, were really big influences. Is there anyone else you want to throw in there?
There was a whole big string of them. I mean, when I first started, there was only a program on television where you could see music, and that was Top of the Pops, and they had it was a bunch of disco and glam rock and stuff. It was big selection of drummers out there. I just found it fascinating watching drummers, and stuff, and how the hell they did that.
Right. And that's where you first saw AC/DC, right? On Sight and Sound?
That's right. What was it? It was supposed to be somebody else. In the TV guide, it said it was going to be Nazareth.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're sitting there, and, there's not much music on the TV. So I'm sitting in the front room with my dad and I think my mum was there too. You know, it came on and there was a cancellation, and there's this band from Australia called AC/DC. And me and my dad are like, oh, whatever. But when they started up, I mean, it's like nothing we'd ever seen before. I mean, it was like just so raw and in your face. I mean, it was like, geez,
Totally.
what is this? You know? Yeah, it was amazing to see them. And I liked them, obviously, ever since, you know.
And they're going to rock and roll for us right now. I don't know if that's part of the sound, but anyway, would you welcome, please, AC/DC.
How did that affect you after seeing that performance? Did you go right out and purchase an album and see them live?
Well, there wasn't much in the record stores from them because it was, what did they just released? I think that was like on the If You Want Blood tour.
Yeah.
From, you know, the live album they were
Right,
promoting.
right.
I could be wrong, but
Somewhere around that era, 77, 78.
yeah. And there were only a couple of record stores in Manchester. There was one that did imports, and I eventually found an album by them. I found Let There Be Rock, and yeah, just what this is amazing, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So I had read where you were a bricklayer, and you started around that time. You were starting your first band called Tora. Did you stay in school, or did you drop out to pursue music at that time?
Oh no, I did the years
You did.
at school, but we had a band that's, you know, when we were kids at school and stuff.
Yeah.
And it went through various names. It was just school friends, you know. One minute it was called Wildfire, then it was called, I can't remember, like Hemisphere or something, and it ended up being Tora. So it was like, you know, it's just it didn't really mean anything. It was just a name.
Yeah. Then some of your early bands included stints with A to Z and Titan, which I recently listened to. It's got a little bit of a Dio flair to that band, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of that melodic heavy rock kind of feel to it. Yeah, the singer was Cal Swan.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, great singer, great, nice guy too. You know, I finished up the album because Les Binks from Judas Priest did most of the tracks.
Yes.
So I did about did I do 2 or 3? And we finished up the album. I'd recorded the last 2 tracks at the Who's old studio in Rampart in London, which is pretty cool. They had the pulpit there. Keith Moon used to do these.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, that unfortunately didn't last that long.
Yeah.
You know. But before that, yeah, it was A to Z. That was like the first band that I had joined that I actually had a record contract. So that was a bit of a step for me. You know, it was good. And they were all from Manchester, whereas Titan are from London.
Yeah. So you moved to London, but nothing was really clicking at the time, right? And is that when you read the ad in the paper?
Yeah. Like I say, that was the stuff after Titan. You know, nothing had happened with Titan. We did 1 show in a year, and I'm thinking, oh, this ain't gonna work. You know, so yeah, a friend saw the ad and showed it to me, and you know, I made a call and arranged for an audition.
Unbelievable. And just for listeners, just to set the stage, AC/DC were recording Flick of the Switch in the Bahamas with AC/DC's drummer, Phil Rudd. His days were kind of numbered at that point. He was burnt out or presumably over-medicating himself, or some other personal drama was unfolding. And Malcolm kind of gave him the first ticket home. And so in 1983, AC/DC had no drummer. And I was going to read you a few things, see if they were actually accurate. But the first thing that they did was bring in Procol Harum drummer B.J. Wilson, who didn't work out. And then the band held like 400 auditions in New York while they were mixing Flick of the Switch. They came up with nothing. And then they continued to hold like 300 more auditions in London. They test drove Simon Kirke of Free and Paul Thompson of Roxy Music. And again, they just weren't feeling it. But then in walks Simon Wright off the street and blows them away. Can you describe that moment for us?
It really wasn't a big deal when I met them because they obviously it was deep inside for me. I mean, I'm just like bursting, but they were so down to earth. I mean, they were just regular blokes. I mean, it was just so, and it made the audition with them so much easier.
Yeah.
You know, they were just so down to earth. And, you know, it's like, hey, what songs, what do you want to play? You know, so I'm going, oh, well, we could try Back in Black or A Whole Lot of Rosie or Let It Be Rock. So like, good, okay. You've got to make a groove. You know, it's not about your musical capabilities and how many drum fills you can do, you know.
Right.
And we finished up, you know, and they seemed to like it and said, great, you know. They started talking about touring, and I'm thinking, should I be here listening to this? It's a bit private, you know.
Right.
Took, you know, all of my muster to lean over and ask Mal. I said, does this mean I'm in the band? And he said, yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it? I'm like, I got to get out of here. I got to call my dad.
That is so classic AC/DC style of communication. It's like their first language is guitar and their second language is English. And like, I don't think they ever told Brian or Cliff or Mark Evans, for that matter, that they were actually in the band. They were just like, he'll figure it out. You know?
Yeah, that's right. It worked out, you know.
There's an official checklist that I put together, and see if this cross-checks with you. So you did, in fact, hit hard, which is what the ad asked for.
Yeah.
You were super down-to-earth and approachable guy. You were full of energy. You were young. Were you like 20 years old or something? 19, 20.
Yeah.
And you weren't going to ask for a big contract because you're, fresh off the street. Plus, you probably fit the unwritten height requirement rule, correct?
Yeah.
How tall are you? I don't even know.
Yeah, I'm like 5'3".
Oh, you're in. You're totally in.
Yeah.
So you totally hit the checklist there. So on August 5th, 1983, Simon Wright becomes the new member of AC/DC, which is approaching 40 years ago, which is amazing. I have to say, I was pretty excited when you joined AC/DC. I thought you fit the band perfectly, to be honest.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I tried. I mean, it's, Phil Rudd's a phenomenon. It's just the way he plays. He's got this inbuilt groove, and I just tried to dial in with him.
Yeah.
What he'd done, rather. And
or what he didn't do.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's the brilliance of him. What he doesn't do. Yeah. That's an integral part to that band.
Yeah, I was always wondering when you were auditioning with them. I knew you had played. Your first round was like ZZ Top's Tush, and then an AC/DC track, Shoot to Thrill.
Yeah. And
then Zeppelin's Black Dog. How did you get through Black Dog, man? That's not an easy song to play.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, I sort of got to the stop where it stops for a minute. I just I didn't hit the downbeat. I just sort of caught up with it.
Yeah.
I just sort of caught up with it, but I kept myself in time. So
that's impressive. That's impressive. So the first time I ever saw AC/DC fully animated was the Flick of the Switch video on TV. I was a fan since like 1979, but it took 4 years to actually see them move because this was before the internet. I hadn't seen any footage of them. So for all I know, you're the drummer on Flick of the Switch, which we know was Phil drumming. But that was the best drum syncing I've ever seen in my life. Like you hit every cymbal and snare on the beat during that video. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, when you're kind of drum syncing, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
Because it is just a video. Then, yeah, you just listen and you just nail every hit and every cymbal hit and just, memorize it. I wasn't told to do that, but I thought that would be the best thing to do.
Yeah, I totally noticed it. I'm like, wow, he's on every single hit. Doesn't matter if it's the hi-hat or the crash cymbal. I'm like, wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
How did your first gig go? Was that in Canada? How did that feel? You must have been like, you're in the big leagues now. This is crazy.
Yeah, it was, leading up to it, it was a bit, we did a lot of rehearsing, and we rehearsed with the production as well. I forget where. I think it was in London. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, again, like I told you about them, when I first met them, they're so down to earth. I mean, I was just amazed at behind the back line, there's like this big walkway, and there's a bar back there. There's like a small Hell's Bell.
Nice.
There's a dartboard and fridges
cool.
with beer, and so it was just like a pub kind of sort of thing, and I mean, I never drank before I played and stuff like that, so it was I was a little bit nervous, but everybody was in good spirits and stuff. And the drum tech warned me. He said, when the lights go down, Si, it's going to get really, really loud. Just, don't worry about it. Just get up there and play.
Yeah.
And he wasn't wrong. It got just insanely loud. I mean, it's like fucking nuts, But once you start playing and you just kind of get over it, you get through the first song, you're like, okay, here we go. Guns for hire, I think.
Yes.
And it's fun, but it's your job, so you got to get it done,
This must have been a lot for a 20-year-old kid. AC/DC are already veterans at this point. They're married, some have kids, and they've been doing this forever, or at least 5 or 6 years. And how crazy did it get on the road for you?
It wasn't that crazy. I mean, we'd be drinking, obviously, and having a laugh. Brian is great. Brian Johnson is just 200 jokes a minute, I mean, it's just, you're laughing. It's funny stuff, I mean, but nothing really crazy, to be honest with you. There'd be the hotel bars and a lot of people and stuff. And if you wanted to do that, you could do that. I wasn't used to being away, I must admit, that was something I had to sort of deal with. I'd not really been anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I flew on a plane was when we did rehearsals in Los Angeles, and
wow,
it was a bit of a whirlwind, but it was okay. Got through it.
Yeah, I think about it. You had 3 sold out shows at Madison Square Garden, the Monsters of Rock Festival, and then Rock in Rio in front of 250,000 people or so. That's pretty frightening,
Yeah, it can be. I mean, there were some nerves there, but once you, like I was saying, once you get playing, you just settle in, and you're slamming away, and your adrenaline takes over and all, and just sitting there watching Angus fly by every minute, it's that definitely is an inspiration.
Yeah. Was there one member who kind of stuck out as kind of took you under your wing and got the most advice from?
Not really, no. We all kind of had our own way of dealing with being on the road and stuff. We'd all hang out at the bar together and stuff. Angus didn't drink, so he would be resting upstairs or at another corner of the bar having a cup of tea or something. But no, not one. I always I've said it a lot. I mean, Malcolm was the one who was kind of, at the steering wheel, quietly, like nothing, no shouting and screaming or anything, but just a quiet authority about him, which I found really amazing.
Gentle giant.
Smart man.
Yeah. Well, I remember a story I heard, speaking of Monsters of Rock, you walking by, and these moments in your career, you have several of them. You were walking by and you popped your head around and you saw Eddie Van Halen kind of noodling and jamming with Angus Young.
They were in the tuning room, and we would all. There was a dressing room, and then there was a little tuning room, just for Angus to warm up or whatever. And we'd usually all head over to the tuning room and meet up with Ang, and then get led to the stage, So we were all ready. So I headed over there, opened the door, and there's Eddie Van Halen and Angus jamming the blues. I was like, wow, that's cool.
Unbelievable. You're not going to see that very many times in life.
And I got, I said hello to Eddie, and he just started chatting away to me, and super nice guy, just super down to earth and friendly. And he even gave me his phone number. He said, because I lived in LA and he does. So he said, give me a call, man. And I didn't, obviously,
Yeah. So your first fingerprints onto AC/DC's catalog began with Fly on the Wall, recorded in a casino ballroom at Mountain Studios at Montreux, Switzerland. Yes, the same place where they recorded Smoke on the Water, which gave your drum kit this huge sound, right? It was massive.
Yeah, it was a huge room. Yeah, it was. We had to put it, the guitars and the drums and the bass rig into these like kind of huts, kind of baffles on wheels, and so there was some separation. It wasn't just one big huge echoing racket,
right?
It was like
yeah.
But they did put baffles around the drum kit, as I remember, but the roof, there was no roof on it. It was just open to this huge room. So I think that's where a lot of the ambience came in.
Okay, because there is a lot of ambience on there, and I was wondering, do the Young Brothers ever come in and say, "I'd like to play the drums like this," or is it all Simon Wright bringing it to the table on Fly on the Wall?
No, what I played is a lot of what I played in rehearsal. I just kept it as straightforward because I knew that's what they needed. You can't just start going doing triplets on the bass drum and stuff like this. You know what I mean? That wouldn't have gone down well at all.
No. Well, when I think of a track like Shake Your Foundations, it's clearly all you. There's no way Phil would have gotten away with those super cool drum fills at the intro. And I love those.
The way that Angus and Malcolm would work with the songwriting and stuff is like Marlon would demo stuff at home, and then Angus would too, and they bring them into rehearsal, and we give them a listen. So Malcolm had that kind of drum pattern already figured out. He'd figured that out. I changed a little bit of it, I think, but he didn't mind. He thought it was cool. But yeah, I mean, it's between Angus and Mal. They would bring in the ideas, and Mal's were a bit more organized, and Angus's were a bit more live. And sometimes he would play the drums to the riff that he was doing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Is there a standout track for you on that album as far as your performance goes? Something that you're really proud of?
I always like the track Sink the Pink. I thought that turned out all right. But there's a couple others on there. It's hard to pin one down. They've all got their moments.
Yeah.
It was such a pleasure and an honor to do it, to actually them letting me play on to their riffs.
Right.
I
was always a big fan of First Blood, possibly my favorite Send for the Man. It's just like this nasty, meanest AC/DC riff of all time, and maybe the hardest hitting drums of all time. It sounds amazing.
I like that tune too. I think that's really heavy, and I think that drum sound helped that song too, being a little bit bigger and not quite as dry as some of the albums before had been. So I think it gave it that bigness.
Totally.
We were doing the small documentary, the mini documentary, to about 5 of the songs on it in New York.
Oh yeah.
I think I saw the album cover about halfway through, and it sort of made sense, because they were going to have a character that was flying around in it and stuff. And it was at a rock club, and pretty simple story, really. But, they pretty much blew it apart,
Yes. I remember picking that up, being so excited that I was going to get 5 AC/DC songs in a row. And then the bummer was, it was like, it showed you guys playing like 15% of the time. And the rest of it was all story,
Yeah, I always enjoy live performances more, I've got to admit. But it was what it was. I really didn't have a say in, being the newbie.
It was great to see you up there behind the skins when we went to see you live. Both Greg and I actually went to see our first AC/DC show with Simon Wright behind the drum kit. So I was pretty psyched, and you guys pulled out Jailbreak, which must have been like a 10 or 11 minute song for you to play.
Yeah, I think Angus did his little striptease. He used to do that in Bad Boy Boogie, didn't he?
Yes.
We ended up trying it in Jailbreak, and it's cool. It's got that, cheekiness and stuff.
Yeah.
I love the song Jailbreak. That's a great song.
Yeah. It was cool that they added that to that set, that actual tour.
Great riff. Yeah. Yeah. And Angus used to, at the first time, I believe that he used a whammy bar on his SG. He had an SG that he brought.
Yes, I saw that. I was like, is he trying to keep up with Eddie on that or what?
Well, he wasn't really, what's the word? He wasn't really being flash with it.
Yeah.
He was just doing a lot of the, the down runs and stuff like that.
Yes.
I don't think there's a comparison there. Either way.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your next adventure in the Bahamas. You were all over the place recording, which is pretty fun for you, I'm sure. You were in Compass Point Studios with George and Harry, right?
Yeah, that was for Who Made Who?
Yes. Stephen King driven soundtrack, Who Made Who, and a song that actually features both you and Cliff at the beginning of the song, which is pretty cool. It had like a honky tonk woman vibe to that tune.
A little bit. Yeah. I've always enjoyed songs like that, that just start off gradually with the drums and then a bass, or just build up a little bit. I thought it was good.
Really kind of revitalized AC/DC in the mid 80s there a lot, with the sales did really well. Did Stephen King come down and visit you guys?
Yes, he did. He came down one time. We were in the middle of it, doing some instrumentals or an instrumental part to the movie. It was kind of weird because I think it was George and Mal thought it might be a good idea to bring in like televisions into the studio when I was doing my tracking thing, so I could sort of follow the crashes,
right?
Truck crashes and the car crashes and the freaking lawnmower crashes. And I'm sitting there going like, this is bizarre. I'm playing to a television. What's going on here? But I did it. I just, pacified him and got the job done as best I could.
My God. I don't know how you got through that, because that was a bizarre movie. It's kind of like a cult classic now, I guess, but it was very strange. That was his directorial debut, and I heard he was like coked out of his mind while he was directing that movie, and it shows.
Maybe. Yeah, it's not one of the most incredibly great brilliance. But I mean, like there again, I didn't have anything to do with that decision, so I was just there doing my stuff, so it was like, but he did come down and say hello and stuff, and we went out to dinner, and
he's an interesting guy. I've met him a few times. He's a strange man.
He's a little bit intense, but I don't know, maybe it helps with the horror movie thing.
I think so. It's probably a benefit. I wanted to say, I wish that they would release a Who Made Who special edition with all of those soundtrack bits and pieces that were left on the cutting room floor, because I don't know if you remember those, but I've heard a few of those surfaced, and they're so cool. The ones that were in the film but not on the soundtrack.
I haven't heard them. As far as I can remember, and it was a long time ago, I think there was some blues stuff that Angus played that wasn't on the that didn't make the film cut, but I don't think there was any performances.
Well, I just so happened to may have found one. Can I play it for you and see if it's officially you?
Yeah.
All right, let's play it. Sound familiar?
Yeah, when that bass lick came in.
Really?
Yeah, that was kind of a start up for what did that end up being? Shit, I forget the name of the song.
Someone called it Contra Attack. I found it online, and I'm like, who got this? And thank God they did, because it's so cool.
Yeah. I think that was an actual just messing around, really.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think it did lead up to being, what's it called? I can't remember the name of the song on there.
DT? Chase the Ace?
Not Chase the Ace, the other one.
DT.
Yeah, DT, that's it. But I could be wrong. There's a lot of stuff. It's like when we would do sound checks and stuff, people have asked me, did you write any songs during sound check? And it's like, no. We would just like jam the blues. Like Angus would start up, Brian would start singing something, You know, it's just out of boredom.
Yeah.
Really.
Right.
You just start playing and noodling around. You know, it's no big deal. It's not like a song, so to speak. You know.
I've noticed that on that soundtrack they had noodled with, it's almost like a dance remix of "Shake Your Foundations." What did you think of that, and who did that? Was that George Young who remixed that?
I know what you're talking about.
Like they took all those funky drum beats out.
I don't know who remixed it.
Yeah.
You know, it was like a special EP version of it, I think, or something.
Yeah.
My sister actually showed me one Christmas. And I said, "What's that?" You know, they'd like chopped up the drums and made the intro a bit longer and
Yes.
stuff and bits here. And I'm like, oh okay.
Well, I saw that show as well, and I remember you guys added "She's Got Balls," which was a really cool throwback tune to add to that set list.
Yeah, I thought so. When they first mentioned it, it's not. It's kind of up tempo, but not. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there was a good, nice long middle section in the middle of that.
Yeah, nice groove to it. I would change up question for you. You have this huge commanding sound to your drums, and out of curiosity, of all the bands you played with, what's the most difficult track that you've ever had to play live?
Of all of the bands that I've been involved with,
Yeah,
that would be the Queensryche stuff that I had to learn.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, there's like, we did all of the album Operation My Crime live,
Right.
and there's some little tricky turns on that one. You gotta really pay attention. So, but it was good. It was fun doing it. You know, it was working it all out.
Right. And how did a song like "Let There Be Rock" compare to something like that, where it's just like brutal for 7 or 8 minutes of just pounding the same thing over and over?
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, the with the song off of Operation Mindcrime, it needs a little bit of thought, and you've really got to be thinking about things, where the next change is going to come up, and with Let There Be Rock, it's just pure stamina.
Yes.
Keeping the groove going.
Right.
Underneath, Cliff and Malcolm. That was awesome too. I mean, it's like a freaking train coming at you.
It's amazing. Well, if we had to pick a Simon Wright era of AC/DC, Blow Up Your Video might be a good place to start, because it felt like the team was back with Harry and George, and you were at the south of France, right?
Yeah, it was south of France.
Yes.
It's a lovely place. I mean, it was just so picturesque and quiet, and like you used to be an old winery.
Oh, nice. And what did you appreciate working with George and Harry in the studio the most?
Just their knowledge, their way of having a kind of like a schedule.
Yeah.
It moved things forward a little bit, and they were just so professional. I mean, Harry was great. They were both great.
Yeah.
They knew what was going on.
It was nice to have them back too. And Blow Up Your Video had not the traditional AC/DC groove. It was more like it had some jazz and funk thrown in there a little bit. If you listen to your drum work on Mean Street or That's the Way I Want to Rock and Roll, that little hi-hat work, that was really fun.
That hi-hat was just like old school rock and roll, like Bill Haley or something.
Totally.
That era. And the other stuff, I mean, it was just those riffs. They just kind of called for that kind of groove, and it just kind of came out that way. We definitely weren't thinking jazz when we were doing it.
Yeah, I know. It felt a little different, which was nice, because, I know that you were kind of getting a little itchy at that point with the 4 on the floor and like, hey, let's change things up a little bit. So you could tell. And it was a nice change, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, there was some on Go Zone and stuff. There was a couple of little ups and changes there. It was cool. It was all good. It was a real treat, because I knew their history and stuff. And there was a lady who worked for Albert's in Sydney, in Australia, who would come out and see them. She'd known them for years. Her name was FIFA Riccobono.
Yes.
One day she bought me this whole big pack of cassettes of George and Harry's, a band they used to have called Flash in the Pan.
Oh, yes, I remember them.
Yeah, and I hadn't really heard them, and I put them in the Walkman.
Yes.
I was amazed, so I knew a little bit about them before they came in. So that was cool. And I really respected them, the way that the stuff that they'd done before,
I remember they had a track called Hey St. Peter, maybe?
Yeah.
That was really fun. Very catchy.
Great pop songs.
Yes, totally. And so you kicked off that tour in Australia. I had heard where AC/DC were toying with the idea of playing It's a Long Way to the Top. Is that true? Because they had never played that after Bon had passed. So I thought it was pretty wild to think about putting that into the set list, but I had heard a rumor.
No, I can't remember. I mean, we were trying to change the setup a little bit. I do remember that. I think we rehearsed in New Orleans for a couple of weeks. We tried like Dog Eat Dog and Riff Raff, I think, as well. But I don't recall anything about It's a Long Way to the Top. That would have been a great idea.
Oh my God, yeah.
Me and Brian were always like, oh, why don't we try this one?
Yeah.
I'm like, how about Down Payment Blues? And Mel would go, that's a long one, all right. I'm like, shit.
Mel had the final word, huh?
Well, not really. It's not a make or break kind of conversation.
Yeah.
It's just thrown in there, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, now that you had this steady paycheck coming in, or at least I hope you did, what's the most righteous thing you bought during your time with AC/DC?
I bought a house in England, and then I sold that, and then I bought another home in South Los Angeles.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't over the top, but it was nice to be able to afford to buy a house.
Totally.
Yeah, so that was about the most extravagant, really.
Yeah. Nothing flash, no Porsches, 911s or anything like that.
Oh, I did buy I had an Audi 4.5 Cloverleaf.
Oh, Brian must have been impressed.
Yeah, he was, yeah. One of the crew said to me, oh, that's great. What's your insurance going to be like? It's like insuring a boy with a rocket, right? I'm like, well, yeah, it is a bit that way, Plug.
During that tour, you said you had witnessed a scuffle between Malcolm and Angus, and things were kind of not going well for Mal, and it was time for him to kind of step aside. That must have freaked you out about the future of AC/DC a little bit, did it not?
Well, it was a bit of a shocking moment. Yeah, I'd never seen that before with Mal acting like that. And we were all deeply concerned about him.
Mm.
But it didn't last long because I think Malcolm had already figured it out. He says, I need to get out of here. I need to go home, see my son. Obviously, the family member, Stevie, their family, they'd always kept in touch and stuff. And Stevie had a band. I think his band opened up, though, on the Back in Black tour years before. So, but, he's family. So
yeah,
Stevie came in and did a cracking job.
Yeah. In fact, I was at Stevie's very first show ever.
All right.
I would have been so proud of him if I knew it was Stevie, because he looked just like Malcolm and he played like Malcolm. I was like, oh, Malcolm did a great job. It wasn't Malcolm.
I know. I would look over sometimes and I'd go, that's just like Mal. Jesus. He's got the back of his foot tapping away all the time. His head's going.
Same clothes.
Yeah.
Same guitar, maybe. It was pretty trippy, but he did a great job filling in.
Yeah, it was a shame about when it happened with Mallet. I'm just so glad it finally got sorted and he came around again and came back. And
Brian's going through a divorce. Malcolm's kind of like regrouping. The musical landscape is changing. You're getting tired of the whole 4 on the floor thing. And the 80s was kind of a rough period in general. They had lost Bon Scott and Phil Rudd was kicked out. New manager. PMRC is down your throats. Like, this is a lot going on for you guys. So I don't blame you for kind of like saying, maybe I could look around and try something else for a change.
No, it didn't have to do with anything that you've just said with regards to really why I decided to move on. It was just the playing. Although you did mention the 4 on the floor. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was the thing. There's anything wrong with that. It's just I need to do more.
Yeah.
Just do more, be able to be a bit more creative. And that's all it was,
Were you the first official member of AC/DC to quit? AC/DC Beyond the Thunder theme song, Trailer Trash, written and performed by Gannon Arnold. VO talent by Bruce Jacobson. Cinematography and sound recording by Greg Ferguson. Edited and mixed by Eric Keel. Written, directed, and hosted by Kurt Squires. Produced by Greg Ferguson, Eric Keel, and Kurt Squires. AC/DC Beyond the Thunder is a Squires LLC current motion production. Copyright Beyond the Thunder podcast, all rights reserved. This has been a Nat Attack presentation.
Shazbot Nanu Nana.